Good luck.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lat Mackey, and this is Sequence Break, a look at speedrunning, game development, content creation, and everything in between. Thanks so much for joining. In-person guest. You're the only other person I think who did in person was my wife, Angela, who you know very well. And I think it was because we were on lockdown.
Right.
Most of the time, this is done over, Zoom or Discord or whatever. Oh. So anyway, thanks, dude, for being here in person. Rudy is the host of Drinks and a Movie podcast. And for those, how would you give the quick 2-second pitch? What is Drinks and a Movie podcast?
I talk about movies and booze. So we'll pick a spirit or a craft beer of some sort, pair it with the movie, and then that's that. We just talk about both.
A guest I had on just a couple of episodes ago, Sharfers Sharif. He has a whole bourbon collection, and I literally wanted to stop the podcast and just chat bourbon. But it didn't really make sense with talking about Barbie speedrunning. So anyway, folks, so today in this episode, we're actually going to do something I haven't really tried before or done before. We're going to take a look at kind of the cultural impact of Mortal Kombat, and actually some of the influences that made Mortal Kombat possible, and then how Mortal Kombat influenced culture going forward, because Mortal Kombat did a lot in the video game space, but then it also influenced a bunch of stuff after. It's almost like before Mortal Kombat and after Mortal Kombat. I mean, we'll find out in just doing some of this research, but basically fighting games weren't even necessarily a genre at the time the Mortal Kombat was released. So it's kind of interesting, and how Mortal Kombat at least played a role in my childhood. I don't know if it was the same in yours. And we'll go over that. But then also one of the things we do on Rudy's podcast is deep dive into films all the time. And so what are some of the influences of the characters? How did we get Liu Kang? How did we get Johnny Cage? All these different characters. What are some of the films that influenced those? And I think that's a really interesting part to kind of. One of the things I love about, there's this film critic who's no longer with us, Roger Ebert. You're probably familiar with him, but if you read a Roger Ebert review, he always gives you references to what might have impacted this part of the film. And so it makes me want to go watch 3 other films after reading the review of a film he gave, Yeah. So I'm hoping maybe we can dive into that a little bit today. So here we go. First things first, though, in honor of Drinks in a Movie podcast, let's beverage it up. What do we do tonight? We are drinking some Old Forester 1920. Rudy, what would you say about Old Forester 1920?
This is one of the darlings of their whiskey roast series. I really like high proof bourbons, and this one comes in at 115 proof. And Prohibition style, they say. 1920. It's just really good. That's all I can say about it. It's Brown Foreman. Got a little bit of a banana note, almost like Jack Daniels does, if you're into that kind of thing. But yeah, I just think of the Old Forester lineup. For me, this is my favorite. It's really well balanced for being a high proof with the sweet and the spice. And if you're into old fashions, highly the best old fashions I've ever had in my life were made with this one right here. Because the high proof really shines above your bitters and your sugar and all that. And it'll make the best balanced cocktail you've ever had.
I do want to say, if you're just trying out bourbons for the first time ever, just be a little bit aware of this one. It's definitely, it's 115 proof. Yeah. It's got some heat to it. It's one of the things I like about it. But in all fairness, I've been to bourbons for a little. Right. I don't have the collection that you have, but I just enjoy the taste of bourbon. And
and you can always cut it with water. If it is too intense for you,
there you go, exactly.
Just add some drops of water. There's nothing wrong with that.
An ice cube is, another way to do it. So cheers on the chat here. So here we go.
Oh man, that smells good. I haven't had this in a minute.
I gotta say, I cheated a little bit and had one a couple nights ago. So it's so if you want a beverage with us, feel free. And Amp, thanks so much for throwing out the Drinks in a Movie link in the chat there. We really do appreciate it. So if you want to go find anything about Drinks in a Movie podcast, Instagram, probably the best place, right? For finding and stuff. We've done, in fact, some of the movies we're going to talk about today, we've actually talked about on your podcast.
So
it's pretty cool. I guess we'll get into it. We'll get into it as we go along. So, okay, first things first, let's start with this. So I'll share a little bit about my history with Mortal Kombat. I was fortunate enough to grow up there was a market about a mile away from my house. In fact, just the one down here for my parents. I'm not in my parents' house right now. The one down the street from my parents' house. And right next door, a comic book store came in when I was a kid, a collectible comic book store. My dad was into comic books. And so as well as comic books, magic cards, Pogs. You could buy everything from this place. He had 3 arcade games. One of them was Street Fighter 2, huge influence as well. But then Mortal Kombat came in, and we have it up here. The year that Mortal Kombat was released
92.
92. That's right, 1992.
Same as Knob Creek. Should have drank that.
I know, right? Could have done it well. I was 10 years old at the time, and it really... At 10 years old, my parents finally allowed me to like go on my own down to the market on my bike and everything. So as I'm becoming, starting to grow up and stuff, this just hit right at the right time. And I had really never seen a game like this where there was all this, the gore was so ridiculous. I always found it comical. Like I almost thought the gore was so much that it was like this comical thing.
Definitely.
So, but on the flip side of this, this started all of this controversy with violence in video games and all this kind of stuff. And I remember not understanding a lot of it as a young kid, but I don't think I understood a lot of it because my parents always taught me that video games. Oh, thank you for noticing. Oh, damn it. Okay, so is that better there? Hang on a second. Let me put a clip on this.
I do have a shorter cable. Will that work? Maybe. Hold on,
folks. We're gonna try and solve this because it's definitely having an issue. So, thank you for your patience here.
I think this one's 3 feet. Maybe it'll reach. Dang, I need to get a new one.
I literally just recently replaced mine.
Okay, sorry, this is less than 3, but I guess we'll see.
I think it'll get, if not, I can move the mic. So, guess we'll find out if it's the cable or the mic. Oh, look at that! We got room. We got cable to spare. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. I'll move a little bit closer. Test. Okay. Thank you for your patience, folks. Sorry about that. Wonder how far much back we should start. Let me go. I'll just start with how. Let's start back with my story, and then we'll go from there. Okay. Yeah. Cool. So when I was 10 years old, comic book store starts and opens 1 mile from my house. And that was right around the same time my parents finally started letting me go out on my own and stuff like that with my brothers and my friends and all that kind of stuff. So it was a big deal when the comic book store down the street started putting in arcade games. Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat were like the first games I can remember being in the store. And just remembering how influential those games were, the perfect games to like challenge your friends at. They were super fun. And then Mortal Kombat had this thing that no other game I had ever seen really had, was this ridiculous over the top gore, which at the time I thought was like comical. And the reason I did was when I was growing up, my parents always taught me that these things in video games and movies and all these kind of things were fake. Like I knew growing up that this was fake, what I was looking at. And so it never occurred to me that somebody might think this is realistic or something like that. And maybe the graphics influenced the way people felt about Mortal Kombat. I'm not quite sure. But I know as 10 years old in 1992, when this game first came out, it definitely hit me right in the right spot at the right time. What's your experience with Mortal Kombat?
Yeah, I remember the arcade games. I mean, I'm a little younger than you. I had Mortal Kombat 3 Ultimate.
Oh, there you go.
On Super Nintendo. And man, I remember when Mortal Kombat 4 came out, and that was like the 3D, the new like 3D style.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the last arcade game they had.
Right.
And when I got like really deep into it though, was when Deadly Alliance came out on I think Xbox and PlayStation or whatever in like 2002. And that's when I got into like the story aspect of it, and like really fell in love with that stuff and like the lore. I love like the lore and all the characters' backstories. I think that stuff is super interesting, and it's crazy how deep it goes and how they're still continuing it. Even like now, you know, with all these like sequels, like so many years later.
The newest game that literally just released within a few months of
Mortal Kombat 1.
But the whole idea is to give this backstory, to actually flesh out these characters and not just have one line of dialogue. We've actually have the game up at some. Maybe we'll actually play it a little. If you look over here, got the game up on. This is over on my TV right here. If we want to play, this is the Super Nintendo version, the bastardized version of the arcade game.
Oh, is this the one that they censored?
Yeah, there's no. The Super Nintendo was like no blood, man.
That's right.
So It's so interesting. So then, did you get a chance to see any of the Mortal Kombat movies? Was that at all interesting?
Yeah, no, I grew up with the movie for sure. That was what 95, the first 95. One, which we talked about on the podcast.
On Rudy's podcast, we actually did a whole commentary track to the first movie.
That's right. Yeah, we were watching it. We talked about it. I loved the movie. Grew up with that. I remember seeing Mortal Kombat Annihilation with my older brother and my dad. Yeah. And even then, like being pretty young, thinking like this isn't very good, you know, like I not really knowing why yet, but just this is people are recasted and just stuff is really odd.
What is happening in this movie?
Yeah, and then man, you go back and revisit that movie, and it's like kind of crazy that they accepted
that was actually
stuff that like went on.
Some interesting. I think this is kind of interesting to share. So first, let's talk about the movie just real quick because I think it's kind of interesting. When the 1995, the first one came out, up until this point, the only other video game movies that had ever been released were Super Mario Brothers, the very first one, not the one we just recently got, the animated film. So think about that for a moment. And did you ever watch that movie, by the way?
Grew up on that one too, man.
Okay, it's pretty bad, but I love it for some reason because of how bad it is.
I dig it. Like I have yet to revisit that as an adult, though. I need to do that soon.
Me too.
I feel like I'll still like it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, and then you read like John Leguizamo talking about it, and apparently they were like drunk half the time.
It sounds like a total shit show.
Dennis Hopper, like I don't know. There's. It's not like Mario, you know, in a way, but somehow it's still just this crazy ass movie that I like.
Well, and the point is that up until that point, Super Mario Brother movie and Double Dragon were the only two video game movies that had been made, and both of them kind of flopped. Like they weren't big, huge successes.
Double Dragon's pretty bad,
right? I would sort of argue that like The Wiz with Fred Savage might have been kind of a video game movie because like promoted Nintendo products all over the place.
It was like a commercial for Super Mario Brothers 3.
Exactly. But so then the first Mortal Kombat movie comes around, and for whatever reason, I don't know if it was the marketing, the game itself, a bunch of us thought that it was, that was the thing that got our butts over into the theaters to watch the movie. And some of the things that may have like been credited with that is that like it was rated PG-13. Kids could actually go see it. It wasn't this blood gore fest kind of thing, which I got to tell you, when I remember being in the theater, like I didn't really notice or care that there wasn't a ton of blood.
Yeah, I never really thought about that.
Yeah, right.
To be honest, like now that you mentioned, I'm like, oh shit, that was PG-13, wasn't it?
It wasn't. It wasn't like the new Mortal Kombat movie that just came out. So.
Yeah, they did it right. Well, they did a lot of things wrong, but they did the fatality stuff right.
So it's kind of interesting, and it was a success. On $20 million budget, $20 million budget, they made $122 million. So like the movie, it's not just the video game series that's a success. There's this other stuff to it, which. Admittedly, Street Fighter came out before this and kind of showed that there could be a success around this kind of stuff. But Mortal Kombat it was mixed reviews, but the fans seemed to like it. Whereas the Street Fighter movie, my friends at the time, it seemed like we made fun of that movie. Like we knew it was silly and hokey.
Well, we covered both of them on my podcast. And I mean, Mortal Kombat is by far the better movie in my opinion.
For sure.
And because they played it straight, like Street Fighter did the campy thing, and it just... And there's like the whole thing about they paid Jean-Claude Van Damme and like thousands of dollars worth of cocaine or something. Like half the budget, like went 2/3 of the budget went to him or something.
Went for cocaine.
But which is crazy. But Mortal Kombat like played it straight, and like the story is interesting, and like I feel like sometimes people think about the older games and how like, just punching and there's no story, but there is a story even from like the very get-go of the first one that they continue. And I think the movie did a decent job of sticking with that, the tournament, all these people coming from around the world to do it. Shang Tsung is your villain. You got Goro, and even the, I think part of what adds to the success is I'm sure a lot of people are going in PG-13 or not, like really hoping for that violence. And also, I mean, martial arts movies have always been hit.
Right.
So there's like a whole, even people that might not even be into the game in the martial arts movies,
even before the internet, like getting some of the martial arts films and I would even say any kind of imported action film from Japan or, you know, some of these other from Korea. I mean, this was just, there was something about seeing those and how it's all has always, Bruce Lee kind of has always seemed cool, you know? I don't know. And Van Damme, I can't dismiss, we're going to talk about Van Damme here in just a second, but Van Damme definitely with Bloodsport, like popularized martial arts a lot for his generation or for that generation of people who were viewing cinema and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting just to note all that stuff. Okay, let's get to it a little bit. So let's approach this like pre-Mortal Kombat and post-Mortal Kombat, because in the video game space, at least according to some research I've done, there wasn't a lot of what we would think of as realistic violence in video games. Yeah. There was this game Narc that was in the arcade and then came to the home consoles that did actually have blood, and that was one of the things that also came up in the Senate hearings here in the States. There was also a game what's the Night Attack, which full motion video games were becoming a thing as well, right around this early 90s time. And there's some new technologies coming out, such as this, what we're about to see, these pre-rendered graphics, motion graphics, kind of basically being able to capture real life things and putting them in a video game. That's the one, you know, one of the big technological advances Mortal Kombat made and popularized. Right. So up until that point, we hadn't had a lot of that. And all of a sudden, Mortal Kombat comes out from John Tobias and Ed Boon with a team. 4 people made this game. Literally 4 people from Midway made this game. And that's just to kind of think about a game that's and a series that's going to impact culture so much. Kind of wild. Just 4 people. Yeah. The ones who came up with this. There's an interview so let me just throw this out. Ed Boon, if Twitter's still around when you're listening to this, because who the hell knows at this point, Ed Boon is quite prolific on Twitter. He's always answering questions. He's just a really fun developer to follow. But he was asked, what were the original inspirations and concepts you wanted to touch on with the first Mortal Kombat? And here's what this couldn't sound more honest. At the end of the day, I think you could think of it as it was just 4 guys in their 20s, completely inspired by action movies of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and just mashing up all of those ideas. And wouldn't it be cool moments into a fighting game? Let loose and basically allowed to do what they wanted to do. You know, 4 guys in their 20s making a game, and nobody's telling us what to do. That's the result of what Mortal Kombat was. And I got to be honest, when you play the game, and when I experienced it as a kid, that kind of felt like it. Yeah. I don't know. You know, I never think about it. It seemed like 4 like dudes were making this game, and like, what would be cool shit we could put in a video game?
Wow, what if you can freeze people? Yeah, let's do it.
Like, what if you throw a harpoon into somebody's neck?
Uppercut someone's head off. Yeah, for sure.
Well, you know, and I just think that's it really has that feel, and I think that's probably why it hit a lot of us, you know, teenage boys, like right in the perfect spot and stuff like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about the characters, and the research that I've done all come from quotes from Ed Boon. And that's one of the things that's kind of cool, is that he's given so many different interviews. So we actually kind of know what the actual inspirations are for these characters and why I think they're important to what makes this thing so impactful moving on. So let's first start with Liu Kang and Bruce Lee. What can you tell us about Bruce Lee? Like, what are what films have you seen of Bruce Lee that you could definitely see some influence into the character of Liu Kang?
Oh man, I've seen all those movies. I've read the Tao Jeet Kune Do, other books by him. There's a period where I was super into Bruce Lee, and yeah, I mean, I just think it's very clear, like aesthetically, that's who he's based off of, and like his kicks and even the sounds he makes are so much like the Bruce Lee. Yeah, I'm not gonna imitate it, but you know what you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I could not do justice to the legend,
and it's fitting that, you know, he would be the hero and the champion of Mortal Kombat. You know, to have someone based off Bruce Lee do that. You know?
Yeah, totally, man. I think it shows you the impact of the films that Bruce Lee did, because I think it seems like we still see the impact of Bruce Lee in modern stuff. I mean, it seems like his legend kind of gets still told today. I think about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where literally we have scenes even though I know it's a fictionalizing.
Yeah. Well, they like tore him down
and totally bastardized him. Yeah. Really sad. But there's something about his persona and the characters that he played in the films that we saw of his that still has this like lasting impact on us today, you know?
Yeah. And even just much like how Mortal Kombat kind of changed the landscape of games, like he changed the landscape of martial arts in the West and all that. And even his idea, like radical idea of Jeet Kune Do and this more street fighting style that I could be wrong. I'm not necessarily into mixed martial arts, but that's got mixed martial arts has to be rooted in what he was bringing to the table.
Right.
Because that's pretty much what he was doing.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
like use everything to your advantage and all that. And yeah, iconic.
Totally iconic. And it makes sense because if you're going to make one of your characters be this martial arts, specialist, what other, who better known than Bruce Lee, even at the time in the early 90s. I think the most infamous or the most famous one is Johnny Cage, being, a reference to Van Damme. And at this point, I'm guessing most people listening to this podcast know this story, but the original idea for the game was to make a video game based on Van Damme,
Yeah.
and what that would look like and how would you want to tell that story. And at some point, talks broke down. Who even knows if they ever had a negotiation? But needless to say, the spirit of Van Damme lives on in Johnny Cage. And almost, I don't know, having played the game again, I mean, like, it almost seems like they're making fun of or mocking a little bit the Hollywood persona. I'm not
no, definitely. I feel like they lean into it more and more in like the later games too. And it's almost that thing you can apply to any kind of martial arts actor. I think especially probably more so in America, like even a Steven Seagal type where there's like, oh, how many of these people are real or legit or frauds? Because that's the thing with Johnny Cage, right? It's like, he's the Hollywood superstar, but is he a fake?
Yeah.
Or is he like the real deal?
Yeah.
And he's going to go fight in this tournament and prove that he's one of the best in the game. I love Johnny Cage, that character. I even like, I like the portrayal in the movie too. And it was disappointing that the newest Mortal Kombat didn't have Johnny Cage, though they did tease it for the next film.
Got it. Okay.
So, which is shooting. I saw they posted like a slate.
Wow,
they started it, I think a few weeks ago, Mortal Kombat 2. Which is really Mortal Kombat 1, but that's neither here nor there. But
interesting that they're actually moving forward with that because that one was a COVID release and it was basically digital only. It was on HBO or whatever. So
yeah, I mean, no, they had it in theaters.
Did they have a theater?
Yeah,
okay.
I made it a point to see it at theater in the morning because I was recording with some guys from England. We were doing a joint episode on it. So we did like mine and did theirs. And I forget the order, but one was at like midnight. I think mine was in the morning. So I like went to the theater to watch it. Recorded with them, watched it again on HBO Max, and then recorded with them again. Sorry, I mean it's Mortal Kombat talk. Come on.
No, that's why we're here, right? So it's like I agree with you that I think you heard Carl Urban. Oh, is that who they?
I heard about that too. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if I like.
Well, okay.
Carl Urban, I don't know.
I'm a fan, so like I liked him in RoboCop. I liked him in RoboCop and in Star Trek. So I'm kind of a Carl Urban fan. So, but I know
he's in that show The Boys too, which I haven't watched.
I haven't watched The Boys either.
Yeah.
So.
I like him, but Johnny Cage, I don't know, man.
Yeah, right?
I don't know.
It's a big role. I mean, it's that there is some weight to that character. So how do they bring it? I have kind of a soft spot for Van Damme movies, probably because I was a teenage boy when a lot of Van Damme's blockbusters were coming to theater. Like, what's the one with the hockey one? I forgot the one that's in a hockey rink. Holy crap!
Van Damme?
Yeah,
there's a hockey movie with them.
Yeah. No, is that Sudden Death? Is that his or is that somebody else?
That sounds like it. I'm not familiar with many Van Damme movies, to be honest.
Okay, I gotta look it up.
Sudden Death sounds like it would be a Seagal movie, but I don't know.
Oh man, no.
All right, this person's saying sudden. All right, we got a couple sudden deaths here.
Didn't I see that with theaters? But Bloodsport. Probably the first movie I saw him in.
Bloodsport's the jam, man.
I got to tell you, it's so much fun still to watch to this day.
It really is. It's great. Well, and Chris, Callie, and I did a podcast episode on Bloodsport where somebody in here commented that they really like vodka. We tasted 6 different, because we're not into vodka at all. Yeah. We tasted 6 different vodkas and we called it the Kumite. Because it's a tournament movie. It's the Kumite, which was one of the original titles of Mortal Kombat. That was
really?
It was almost going to be called Kumite. And I guess that stems because Bloodsport is for sure, one of the big influences, just that tournament style, the kind of hidden martial arts thing. But Bloodsport, man. Love it.
Such a good one. Also, another Van Damme, which isn't a martial arts film, but there's a movie he did called Time Cop, which was actually based on a comic book, interestingly enough, and a fun kind of, action. It actually had a little bit of a plot that you kind of cared about. So that was kind of one that I enjoyed as well. But, there are so many is there any other Van Damme films you would recommend or have enjoyed or that you've looked at besides the Bloodsport? Because what were there?
Yeah,
two?
I don't remember The Quest, which was basically Bloodsport again. And Roger Moore was in that movie.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Was he playing Bond or was he?
Gee, I don't even know.
Okay.
It was some guy. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know. I haven't seen many Van Damme movies. I realized that when I was talking to Chris.
Yeah.
He was dropping all these titles.
All these Van Damme movies.
Oh, it turns out I don't know shit about Van Damme.
You're right. Well, if you were my age at all, like in the 90s, he was releasing films. And I'm not sure, moderate success on some of them,
Yeah. The Kickboxer.
Oh,
Kickboxer's all right. That's when he does that. When he's dancing in that bar and then they get in a fight. That shit's crazy. I did like that he was the bad guy in Expendables 2. I don't know if you saw
I haven't seen any of the Expendables. I need to at some point.
Okay. They're incredibly forgettable. During the pandemic, I went and watched all of them.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you a single thing about most of them, but I do remember he was the villain in the second one, and it was kind of cool to see him because he hadn't been in anything. Break-In, he's dancing in Venice Beach. I was almost going to say that, but he's a background actor.
Oh wow, okay.
But
funny.
He fights Stallone in Expendables 2, and he's doing his roundhouse kicks.
Yeah,
but it's funny, you can tell just so old because they barely fight.
Right.
It's kind of a bummer.
Then you bring in the stunt, whoever that person is. I'm curious what IMDb says. Okay, Kickboxer, Double Impact. I never saw any of those. JCVD. I don't know what the hell that is, but anyway, a bunch of Van Damme films. Anyway, not a surprise that that'd be, that Johnny Cage is influenced by that at this point. Here's some interesting ones. Okay, this one I wanted to talk about. So Kano, the character with a partly robotic face, has an infrared eye, is based on Schwarzenegger's makeup for the Terminator.
Yeah, I can see that. Yep.
Which totally we have done we did a podcast episode of yours on the Terminator. Terminator 1 and 2, for my money, still are just amazing films that hold up so damn well.
Yeah.
I didn't even think that, hadn't even put the connection together that absolutely that'd be what other characters up to in the early 90s had infrared eyes like that. I've
always thought about that. It's this is definitely Terminator vibes,
right?
Just a red eye. Because that's another iconic look, that the half face.
Totally.
So
much of the marketing was around that too, right? For the
all the posters. That was the whole thing, the red eye. I really liked both actors and both portrayals of Kano in the original Mortal Kombat movie and the new one.
Okay.
I've never been super into Kano as a player in the game.
Yeah, I never played a lot of him.
Liked him in the movies.
I wonder why maybe because I didn't just his moveset. I didn't play a lot of Kano as a kid growing up either, and I'm not quite sure why. I do think that the how Terminator, even in video games, was a big deal as well. So in the arcade, there was this Terminator video game that was just, it was a gun game. And so the Terminator, they had to obviously distance themselves from that.
Right.
Not to get, first getting sued and everything. But I think that's still kind of cool that has that influence. And that makes a lot of sense if they were people developing games that were big, the 70s, 80s, and 90s impacted them a lot. So kind of makes a lot of sense. Here's one that So we talked about this literally right before we started recording, but Big Trouble in Little China influenced, Raiden, the Electric God of Thunder. We did an episode on Big Trouble in Little China, and I hadn't seen it until I watched it for your podcast. What exactly, if people haven't seen it at this point, because it's a movie that I think came out in the 80s, right? 86?
Yeah, 84, 86.
80, somewhere in there. What exactly is Big Trouble in Little China?
Oh man, it's a doozy of a movie. It's about this trucker, Jack Burton, who goes on an adventure with his friend in Chinatown, San Francisco. They go to the airport to pick up his friend's fiance. She gets kidnapped by some gangsters. So they go to get her, and then there ends up being this alleyway war between these two factions of martial arts warriors and stuff. And then these three godlike figures come. So there's basically three Raidens. I forgot they call them the three masters or the three.
They're gods of lightning or whatever.
Yeah, and it reminds me of Shogun Assassin 2 is the same thing. There's three guys, the same hat. Yes. They all had their individual weapons, and one of them is electricity. And Lopan. I'm forgetting his name, the actor's name.
Oh, geez, he's still alive.
James Hong.
There you go. Yeah, James Hong
is a sorcerer, and they have to stop him because he's trying to like revive himself by marrying the lady with green eyes. It's a great movie. It's a wonderful movie.
It sounds completely bonkers.
It is.
And
it
I
is
think the cool
in the
thing,
best way.
Even for a film there are a fair amount of films I've seen from the 80s that are still bonkers to this day. But for a movie to watch nowadays and you still think it's kind of bonkers, it doesn't happen a lot because we've seen so many interesting ideas over the last 10 or 20 years in cinema. Like this movie's totally bonkers.
Yeah. And it's John Carpenter, who's one of the greatest directors and is in such a like, don't give a fuck. Just I'm going to have fun and like literally going to have fun and make a martial arts movie, like the cables and sorcery fights and all that. And just
it wasn't commonplace here in the States.
Yeah.
You know? So that just wasn't a thing
this
we were
is
doing.
like pre like Crouching Tiger and all that. And they're doing some of those similar kind of stunts. And even, the other aspect of it is this like, I almost feel like way ahead of its time idea of kind of poking fun at like your typical all-American John Wayne hero,
like
where he's just like
buffoon,
like he is like he's not doing shit. He's always one step behind, and really it's like his friend who's like actually getting shit done and is a hero.
Totally.
So that's like a whole other layer of it that I think is super interesting.
I feel like that film, the influence, and probably Carpenter as well, is all over the video game because I think a little bit more obvious one, or if you've seen the film, like I felt like, so because I had played Mortal Kombat first and seen the movies and all that kind of stuff, when I saw Lo Peng, I'm like, oh, that's Shang Tsung. Like, I thought, it literally, I don't want to say it's a carbon copy, but it's pretty, I mean, it is heavily influenced by that character. So super interesting. We talked about it. Does that make connections seem a little bit stronger now that
it does? Okay. Yeah, for sure. It took me a minute to kind of realize that. And Shang Tsung was one of my favorite characters playing the game. Yeah. Because everyone loves Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and I do too. I mean, I can wreck with those guys, but like Shang Tsung was probably my top. Liu Kang. I loved playing Johnny Cage too. But Shang Tsung is just super, like just a dope character.
Just
and
a
like
dope character.
The powers and the shape shifting. If I never figured out how to do it, but it's all good.
Mortal Kombat did something too. So if you played the single player campaign, or if you played by yourself, you'd have to go through all the characters before you got to Shang Tsung. You have to play Goro first and all these kind of things. Yeah. And Mike Tyson's Punch Out, I know, stay with me for a second, does actually the same thing. It's kind of, you can consider it sort of a fighting game, even though it's one-on-one. But like you play all of these larger than life characters as you're moving up towards Mike Tyson. And then when you get to Mike Tyson's sprite isn't that much larger than the character. Shang Tsung isn't a very large sprite when you're playing the game. But then when you play him and you realize how badass this character is, it's like that deceiving thing. I think it's a really cool way to misdirect the player and all that kind of stuff. Something unexpected to say the least.
Well, and especially when you have Goro as the sub boss, right? Prior to Shang Tsung,
this huge four-armed character, whatever. So super interesting. And I don't. Could you play I don't know if you could play a Shang Tsung in the first one, but I know you could in Mortal Kombat 2, and that was like a game changer. That was like totally rad.
Yep.
And then finally, the influences. Actually, not finally. Sonya is loosely based on a martial arts star, Cynthia Rothrock. Are you familiar with her?
I didn't know. Yeah.
I'm not too familiar with her, but I was looking up Wikipedia and what, she was a martial artist, apparently a world champion of some sort, but she got into films. She was part of this, any of these Police Assassins or The Line of Duty Part 2, any of these ring a bell? So unfortunately, I'm not too familiar, but how cool that the developers were also still influenced by all these different forms of martial arts, action type stuff. And she's an American, like, so it's like she's from some of the places these films were being made. So super interesting that that kind of thing comes up. And I think it's important to note because the movie goes a little bit different route with, she's got this military background and stuff, even though she is a martial artist, but she's got like Americanized influence. I don't know if you remember this.
Well, I think that is, I think that was part of the story of the game.
It was, totally. In the
she's
game,
like special forces and all that.
Exactly. But still kind of cool that they had that martial arts influence.
Yeah.
And then finally, Reptile, Scorpion, and Sub-Zero. I don't remember.
Reptile was, I think, a secret character that if you did a bunch of lucky shit in the first game, then he comes out and you fight him.
But
I don't think he was playable until 2 or 3.
Got it.
But yeah, that was like one of the hidden characters, which is cool. Yeah, the palette swap ninjas, man.
The palette swap
ninja. Of which there are many.
Brilliant. It's so cool that they had, you had one actor play all three of those parts.
Right.
And the moves were completely different, basically. They had some similar moves, like the punch, the uppercut looked the same, but the kicks looked the same, but the actual special abilities and stuff are completely different. Enter the Ninja, American Ninja. Any of those films sound familiar?
Enter the Ninja does sound familiar. I have not seen it though.
Ed Boon also claims that Ninja Gaiden was an influence on these characters. And anybody who's watching right now on RGL or is listening to the podcast knows Ninja Gaiden very well. Very well-known ninja series, I think popularized on the NES. I don't think that's a stretch to say that, but there's also a TurboGrafx 16 version. There's also many different platforms of Ninja Gaidens available for your taste and your pleasure. Ninja Gaiden was not... I'm a little sour on Ninja Gaiden, but respect the hell out of the speedrunners who pull it off, because it's not an easy speedrun and people grind the shit out of that game. So of all of the Ninja Gaiden games, so kind of interesting aspect to that. Okay, I think those are the original 7. Any other ones that like you can kind of think of where you see them pop up and you're like, oh man, this is influenced by something? Because I feel like those are the heaviest and they really set the whole franchise in motion.
Yeah. Man, influence off specific people in this moment? Not necessarily, no. I'd have to think about that. And there's so many characters that just come on throughout the game, too. It becomes a little hard to keep track.
There's an interview that Ed Boon gave as well, where he talks about, why does he... They thought they had a fun game. They had made a game that they enjoyed playing, but you never know how successful these things are going to be. And he noticed one thing that players were doing was like the discovery of like the fatalities and some of the special moves. At this point, we had Street Fighter 2, so we knew special moves existed, but fatalities had never been this thing. And he said watching people first find or see or discover a fatality, like it's that eye-opening moment where people are like, what else is hidden in this game?
Yeah.
And I don't think you can discount how much that impacted the success of the game as well. Like that there were things you'd never seen in a video game and you'd never done them to discover it in a video game.
Yeah. And it leaves a lot to look forward to. Like there's even in some of the stages, like going off the bridge and falling on the spikes, or hitting characters like Reptile. And that's stuff that they kept doing in like sequel games with like Smoke, Noob Saibot, Jade, all that stuff. And just, leaves a lot to look forward to. And there was something else I was going to say about that shit. I forgot.
Oh no.
Sorry.
I scrolled down the screen.
No, sorry. I was like leading into something and I just forgot.
There hadn't been a game like this, even though Street Fighter 2 was a huge, huge success. What this did to that game was it almost felt like a completely different game, even though it was still one-on-one. It was a character fighting a character, and it led to, it was one of the games that led to these hearings that happened in the states, in the Senate, about violence in video games and how they're affecting people. And I'm sure many of you have seen the clips of Senator Lieberman and other people trying to, first of all, describe what's happening in the video game, which if you haven't seen those clips, it's fucking hilarious and ridiculous. And there still to this day is no conclusive evidence that, there's no scientific conclusive evidence that some of this violence has led to some of these violent things that have happened in this country and other places and stuff like that. But it did. Okay. Do you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say, and people talk about that the same way in movies, and and there's been a lot of studies. Like I don't know if we can talk about like facts, but there's definitely been studies to go give that disprove it, say that as a matter of fact, when violent movies or games or something comes out, there tends to be less crime because the people that are inclined to do that are like into those games,
playing the games.
And I don't mean to like stop your roll, but I remembered what I was going to say, and that the factor of the hidden stuff, like leaving mystery to it, so there's stuff to look forward to, and also pre-internet, right? And I imagine probably.
It is just, at least the internet had just come around.
Right. Yeah. But like definitely not like the level of what it would be. And even
Reddit, nothing like that.
The game magazines were probably becoming a thing, or at least when Mortal Kombat 1 came out, probably nothing. So now you're up to like word of mouth. Like, your
you
friends
had to see this in the arcade.
Yeah, you see it in the arcade. Your friends talking about it, like, "Yo, I did the reptile sticks his tongue out and rips the head off, or the spine coming out."
So
and I don't even
Luke Cage turns into a dragon.
I don't even know what I pushed. So like everyone's like spending a bunch of quarters trying to like figure out how to do it, and you can't just like look up a combination, you know, which is like crazy to me that people spend so much time and like figure this stuff out.
Like, I mean, Liu Kang was, I think, down, forward, back, and then you had to hit a button. Like, how would you even think to do that?
Like all these combinations.
Yeah, man. Like, I mean, that's just so wild to me. Or even the secrets to like, you know, hit that character off the bridge into the spikes. Like that had to be a special button combination. That's pretty wild that people actually did discover that without the proliferation of the internet that has happened nowadays, right? So this in addition to like Doom and Night Attack, did I say the Night Attack? And I think there was one other film. I think one other game, Splatterhouse might have been a part of this. The video game industry decides to regulate itself with the ESRB, the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, which ends up giving video games a rating going forward. And I never know, you know, how do we know how this is going to impact video games going forward? But even to this day, video games are still rated when you buy them for the home, when you buy them for the home console and stuff like that. And it's kind of wild that something that happened that long ago, you know, this little, what looks almost comical nowadays, looking at this violence has created something that is still around to this day, especially if we buy it here in the States. Yeah. Did your parents have any sort of can't play games that are rated 17 or anything like that?
No, not really. The one thing and this is just my mom, like, and we've talked about this in terms of movies and everything and violence in films, is it wasn't so much the blood and all that, but also like I never pulled off fatalities, man. I wasn't that good at that.
You weren't that guy.
I would just high punch, low punch, uppercut and all that. But or when you like dip down and swing kick them. But it was when you would have the over sexualized characters like Katana and Jade and all that with like big tits, like that she'd be like, "This is awful. Why are you like that?" That's the kind of stuff that would bother my mom, and she'd have to make some kind of comment about it. So like,
it's like, did you realize she's kind of like a demon from another dimension type of thing? Dude,
that don't matter. And they're all palette swapped too anyway.
They really are. Yeah, it's the same actor playing all of them. So how funny.
But yeah, that same funny thing, man.
Yeah, I think please. That's how it's running back out, actually. So I think this is where I got super fortunate in that my parents were so like, this is so fake. In fact, look how fake it is. It looks ridiculous that I never had censored video games that I couldn't buy either. At the same time, I never, in growing up, I never had anything past Nintendo or TurboGrafx 16. So I never made it out of the 8-bit generation. When I played this game, I had to go over to my friend's house and play it on his Sega Genesis, you know, where we'd punch in the blood code. So we actually could have some really terribly animated blood, by the way. But, you know, it's kind of interesting that, although I think you and I probably had, I know of a lot of friends and people whose parents did censor this stuff, who were concerned about it, the stuff that their kids were playing. So,
and I mean, I do get it to an extent, and that's the impact, right? That, like, it's crazy to think back and like, man, that was new. Like you're seeing that. You think a game like Mario,
right?
You know what I mean? Yeah. And parents are seeing that, and they played Atari or whatever.
It's fun.
And now they're seeing these crazy fatalities.
A head with the spine ripped out.
And then there's always the thing too, right? Where there's so many games and stuff where back then it's like, man, these graphics are crazy and awesome.
Yeah, totally.
And then now years later you look back and you're like, wow, that's terrible.
So that's something we look at quite a bit because like Super Nintendo specifically, like there are these games like Super Mario World, Super Metroid, Link to the Past, where the graphics actually hold up really well because they weren't trying to be realistic. They were stylized to a certain degree. There were artists who went for a certain look. And interestingly enough, that look stands the test of time. Yeah. And stuff like this. And we talk about Nintendo 64 a lot because those graphics don't necessarily hold up almost at all.
Yeah. And that was like that was also the big leap, right? Like the 64-bit.
64-bit, 3D, the whole thing. So it's interesting the way that is, that and what will still happen. I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll never know. I mean, but I don't think the specific art styles from like the 8-bit and 16-bit generation, I think are going to continue to hold because the games are fun. Like that's the other thing. I think that's one of the reasons Mortal Kombat has actually held up.
Oh yeah,
yeah, because it's fun. It's regardless of how Mortal Kombat looks, it's still Street Fighter 2 still fun to play, right?
Super fun. And I mean, I've talked to you about how like the Barcade, Bar 82, and the Arts District in Los Angeles. You know, the most popular games there. So it's a barcade. It's a bar with arcade games. There's a room with pinball machines. The most popular games there: Marvel vs. Capcom, Street Fighter 2. And Street Fighter 2, they have it projected like over the bar. So when you're ordering your drink, you're just watching people like fight Street Fighter 2.
That's so cool.
I was going to say though, I mean, one thing I think you kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier was just also the fact that, I mean, this was the first game that did that technology where they use like the live actors, right?
Yes.
And you think that contributed to it maybe where even though the blood and everything was fake, maybe there's kind of that uncanny thing where it's like, it looks like a human being, you know, which is such an interesting effect. Yeah. And it really makes it stand out compared to something like Street Fighter. And the only other kind of fighting game I can think of that I never even really played was Tekken, because I think that was on the consoles I never had.
There's still people doing Tekken tournaments nowadays, by the way.
Oh, really?
There's still a huge Tekken, I wouldn't say huge, but a dedicated Tekken community. So it's interesting. And all three of those are stylized very differently.
Yeah.
You know, like Mortal Kombat still goes for like, you know, realistic. In fact, on the modern Mortal Kombat game, did they use actors or is it like, were they motion? I don't even know if I actually haven't looked at it.
I think once they got into Mortal Kombat 4, where it was 3D, it was no longer any kind of scans of real people.
Super interesting.
Yeah. I mean, they, much like the Saw franchise, like really leaned into the gore as those games went on. Because they know, you know, that's our shit. Like the fatalities are shit. that's where the magic is, you know?
I kind of think of a lot of, at least fighting games, kind of like pre Street Fighter 2 Mortal Kombat and then post. And it's interesting the way both of those games had impacts in different ways. Ed Boon talks about this, that basically there wasn't a fighting genre before these two games. There now was a fighting genre after this.
Did Street Fighter come out before or after Mortal Kombat? I forgot to look that up.
So there is a Street Fighter game called Street Fighter.
Yeah.
And that came out, that was the first one in the 80s, I believe. Street Fighter 2 came out first, and then Mortal Kombat did.
Okay. Yeah.
So Street Fighter 2 was first, but then Mortal Kombat 2 was not very far behind and kind of captured almost a different audience. I don't know if it's a different audience. I shouldn't say different audience, but just it felt like a completely different game.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I grew up on Mortal Kombat over Street Fighter. I didn't play Street Fighter until I was probably 18 or 19.
Oh man.
My girlfriend at the time had Street Fighter 2, so we always played that. And then I got really into Street Fighter 4, like when that had come out. So I got deep into that game. But yeah, Mortal Kombat was the one, and yeah, just very different aesthetically, musically, aesthetically, just again, that real life look compared to the cartoony, kind of, I don't know what you call like animation style of Street Fighter, you know.
They did on the technology side of things. There's some interesting things. The way they actually videotaped against a green screen and all these different things with literally like one light in a basement or something like that. But they keyframed. They actually picked a keyframe, and you'll notice when you're playing the game, the characters don't have a ton of animation frames, interestingly enough, and basically because they only had a certain amount of memory to do certain things and stuff like that. So the technology behind it is interesting, and definitely influenced things moving forward. At the same time, it was somewhat simplistic in its approach, in that they wanted to make a good fighting game, which I think is super important, because there have been other fighting games after Mortal Kombat that were not as successful, but may have been more technologically more advanced because they didn't have the feel of Mortal Kombat or the feel of Street Fighter. And I know we keep going back to Street Fighter as well, because it's kind of tough to discount the influence of that as well.
Yeah, they're the two, to me, iconic, like fighting games, you know, for sure.
I think it's important to note as well, like the impact of the movie that was based on the game as well, because it showed that studios could there is an audience for these things if people, if studios wanted to spend some money and putting these things out. Unfortunately, and I'm curious if you feel this way as well, it seems for a very long time period, we kind of got the lowest common denominator of this, where it was just like, oh, they just want to see what makes the game fun. I just want to see fighting shit,
Right.
Without anything else to go along with that. And that felt like a lot of the video game movies we got post Mortal Kombat. I don't know if you have that feeling at all.
I mean, I can't even think of many of
Oh, geez. Well, there's okay, let's go Resident Evil. That's a series that was most definitely influenced by W.S. Anderson's first film.
Another group of movies that I watched during the pandemic and just forgot all about. Like I finally was like,
so you watched them all and you still forget it?
Except the last one. I wish it wasn't streaming anywhere, so I never saw it, which bums me out because now I have to watch them all again to remember what happened. I just remember Jill Valentine coming back 4 movies later as a bad guy. But anyway,
makes sense, right? Yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah, and I never played Resident Evil. I remember being in 5th grade though, going to my friend's pad. And he had Resident Evil 2 was the big one, right? Yeah. And I remember we were playing it in the dark, and I was scared of everything back then.
It's an amazing film.
I was the kid.
Amazing games.
It's funny that I'm such a horror movie fiend now, because as a kid I couldn't even walk down the horror aisle at the video rental store, Tower Records and shit.
I'm surprised to hear you say that.
Yeah, dude. Just seeing the movie covers, I couldn't do it. So I remember him playing Resident Evil 2 and I could not hang. But so I never really, and unfortunately I never had a PlayStation, right? Growing up, it was Nintendo's and then Xbox. So I never played any of the Resident Evils. So even watching the movies, I don't really know how they connect,
There, Wing Commander, Doom, there were all these other films that came out that are just really not a quality so we recently just got The Last of Us on HBO. Nothing reaches kind of the quality. That's kind of been almost the epitome of what a video game could be in story form. After rewatching all the Resident Evil movies, what do you think about those as a series? Were they entertaining at least, or what's it like?
Yeah, they're entertaining. I mean, and I knew what I was getting into, right? They're pretty goofy.
You get what you
bad CGI and just but it's and I love zombie stuff, and so I go in watching it okay, I'm not going to get social commentary in here. We're not looking at George Romero or 28 Days Later or anything like that. Walking Dead,
totally.
It's big guns and fight scenes.
I saw the first one in theaters and I haven't seen any of them since then.
Oh shit. Okay.
It's totally hokey, but the one thing I appreciated about Resident Evil, the first movie, it doesn't waste any time. It just goes. There are some completely ridiculous scenes, especially the laser thing, the laser haul that chops people up. Makes absolutely no sense, but whatever. I think it was cool to see. First, I guess I probably really liked Mia Jovovich as an actor. So seeing her kick the shit out of everything is actually kind of fun, I thought. So I enjoyed it on that level, but there wasn't a ton of substance to it, I guess, I didn't go back and say, I got to rewatch this film, type of thing.
I mean, it was definitely creepy, just the whole vibe, atmosphere, and when the whole place is getting locked down and everyone's trapped. I did like the second one. I remember seeing that in theaters because that was interesting because they're in the city and the zombies are overrunning the city, and you don't see that often. And Jill Valentine was super cool, and I'm gonna say it, she was hot as hell too.
So easy on the eyes.
So yeah, video game movies are crazy.
Yes, and I don't think we would see that without the success of Mortal Kombat in the theaters and probably Street Fighter in the theaters as well,
Yeah. And I think everyone should go back and revisit the first Mortal Kombat movie too from 95 because, watching it when we did the podcast on it, and I think it holds up. I remember we were talking about how that Bridget Nielsen, I think, is the actress that plays Sonya when she's shadow boxing before the fight with Kano.
Job.
Well, no, I was saying that it's obvious that she doesn't know what she's doing.
Oh, yeah.
When she's throwing punches, it's I appreciate the effort, but it's all right, clearly, Robin Shu, who plays Liu Kang, clearly knows what he's doing.
And that wasn't the actor who had done it for the video game, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
So there's stuff like that sticks out. And
studio
obviously,
shit, I'm sure, had something
and just stunt players and all that, which is fine. All that's good. But I think the story is good and it stayed close to the game. And I think a lot of people don't really realize that somehow. And Matt, Mortal Kombat, you know, you mentioned The Last of Us, and it could possibly make like a really cool series. And I'm pretty sure there has been a series on it.
I think you're right.
I've never seen it. I know there's a series or two that exists. How well it follows the storyline, I don't know. And I mean, I think the newest Mortal Kombat, I mean, can we talk the newest Mortal Kombat movie right now? And that, again, I guess leans into like the impact of this and just shows where you haven't seen it yet.
No, oh shit! But please spoil it. Honestly,
and it shows like the fact that even now it's like, yo, let's make this movie again.
Yeah.
But now, how far we've come in society, for better or worse,
right?
Where it's like, yo, this movie's gonna be rated R. We're gonna do it for real. Like the fatalities are
we
in.
are doing it.
Yeah. And I think it was mostly cool. My problem with it
go for it.
Was it's really there's two main problems. It's really a prequel to Mortal Kombat. They don't even get to the tournament. Like I remember watching it and they're like training for the tournament.
I remember
and I'm like,
people having that complaint.
Yeah, I was like, shit, this movie is long. Like how like we're not even at the tournament yet.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, it just kind of ends and you're like, oh, okay. But man, the actors they got, I forget his name, but one of the actors from The Raid Redemption, which is one of the all-time great martial arts films of like recent years, plays Sub-Zero.
Oh, that's cool.
Awesome job. Yeah. Like I forget the other actor's name who plays Scorpion, but everyone's super on point. The other issue was they added a character named Cole, like super uncool. And because he's supposed to be like the surrogate for the audience, I guess. But it's silly because it's like, well, that's what Johnny Cage is for. Like Johnny Cage is that character. Right. So why isn't this Johnny? Why do we have this new character that's like not cool at all and like kind of like just sucks throughout the whole entire movie? Even Raiden, there's a scene where he's like, "Man, you suck, dude. Like I don't even want you here, but I guess this is what we get."
Yeah,
that happened. Like I'm not word for word, but
basically.
But yeah, and interesting, you know, how far we've come in society where now that's like a thing and it's cool and it's exciting. Right. That's what everyone's looking forward to, right? With that,
that's that movie. That's modern storytelling, right?
Yeah, like it's all about like how violent and bloody can we make this? But if they gave it The Last of Us treatment, man, that has like potential to be so good. Give it like a 6-episode series, Mortal Kombat.
That's and it was a compliment. There's a couple people I really like, and their review of it was one of the best things about it was that it was rated R. They didn't shy away from the things that made the game so impactful in the first place, right? The violence, the whole entire point. It's ridiculous amounts of violence, and that's maybe tonight after. We've zipped this thing up. I think it's time to watch that film because that I
might hang out and not sleep and watch it with you.
I know you gotta work.
Now that we're like talking about it.
It's interesting, right? So it's super interesting. I think this is something interesting to just kind of bring up as we start to wrap this up a little bit here. As of 2021, the series has sold over 73 million copies globally, making it the best-selling fighting game series of all time. There are huge fighting games in video games. You think about Smash and all these other, Tekken's a series, but there are many different ways. Street Fighter, I think of quite often. And so it's interesting that this is the series that has had the longevity and the impact among society at large. You know, even if people don't play video games or anything like that, they're very aware. If they lived through it, if they were alive at all in the 90s, or even after that, they are aware of the impact of this film, which I think it says a lot of this game. And I think that says a lot about the game in general.
30 years of Mortal Kombat.
That's fucking crazy.
30 years of Mortal Kombat. That's nuts.
That is absolutely nuts.
Yeah, I just kind of put that together. I'm like, 92. It's 2023 right now. You know, Mortal Kombat 1 just dropped or is about to drop. I mean, have you, because I know you're mainly the retro games and all that, but have you kept up with the series into your adulthood and played some of the newer ones and whatnot?
So I didn't get back into it. So I played up till Mortal Kombat 3 and then stopped. Okay. Because that's when I started getting a little bit older and I didn't have consoles. I couldn't afford a console. Yeah. So, but Mortal Kombat 11 kind of got me into it a little bit. Okay,
where they go back in time.
They go back in time.
They remake the first game.
That's literally what happens. But it also, I had a little bit of an uncomfortable moment because I hadn't really thought about this through, but a couple of the kids, so I teach high school and I have I teach video game design. And some of the kids were like, hey, can I play Mortal Kombat, in class?
Oh, no.
It was lunchtime. It wasn't actual. I didn't think about it. And then all of a sudden I see a fatality happen where literally the whole screen is cluttered with animated violence. I'm like, maybe that wasn't the best idea.
Yeah, you're like, shit, I have to be that guy now and say no.
Yeah, but like, oh, Dan, do I have to shut this down? Thankfully, it's lunch. It goes quick, but that was the last time Mortal Kombat was allowed in the classroom. Yeah. Needless to say, so that's when I got back into it a little bit. And I really enjoyed our rewatch of the first film because I have such fond memories of the game. And obviously, because I play retro games, I'm big into nostalgia. But being in the theater, and did you go see the first one in theaters by any chance?
I don't think so. Okay. I was pretty young at that point. I definitely saw Annihilation in theaters, but I don't think the first one.
So in the very first scene we talk about it, where you hear the voice scream Mortal Kombat, I literally wanted to like jump up and down and just, it was so exciting to be in the theater and hear that and see like the visualization of this game that I kind of idolized a bit. So
and that perfect music, which I remember as a kid being disappointed because I kind of assumed that was like the theme song for the games. I'm like, how come this song's not in any of the games? Like I want to hear it while we're fighting. Yeah. But I realized it's just like a whole separate song and they use it in the movie. Mm-hmm. But even, man, I just think of the opening titles, the flames and like the shiny logo floating around so and then just with the dragon and the title comes out, like, how fucking cool.
It almost felt like I got to be in the game. And there's only a few movies where I have felt like I was inside of a video game. And I'm a guy who likes to use his imagination. So that shit's right up my alley. Mortal Kombat was one of them. As silly as it was, I was, 95, I was 13. So it was like, it hit me right. I'm like, I've got the perfect imagination for this film. I don't give a shit about a story or anything like that. Just, make me a fun movie. And the story was actually decent for the time. So
technically, it's probably a better film than Bloodsport,
sad but true.
Yeah, like it might be, I guess Bloodsport, the editing might be better because most of those people are like actual fighters of some sort.
And they did it first, they were they kind of showed you the way type of thing. So that's the way I always look at it.
What was I going to say? The games are great. I've always been bummed out that because I haven't had consoles in years and stuff. I mean, I got a PS3 from my friend gave it to me like a few months ago.
Nice.
All I play is Black Ops Zombies, but I
like most people.
I remember being super deep into Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance when that came out on Xbox. That was like 2002, and so that was Mortal Kombat 5, and now you have like some more new characters, the storyline. Liu Kang gets killed. So the story starts with that. And it's like, oh shit. And then a couple games later, there's zombie Liu Kang, which is super. Yeah, man. And then that's when you
try these out.
Oh, dude, that's when you can get, because with Deadly Alliance, that's when like the whole gameplay style kind of changed and the way they did the story and like all the different, like it became more cinematic with the cutscenes.
Yes. Which is in the gameplay, which is super interesting. That was what struck me the most in Mortal Kombat 11 when I was playing. I was like, wait a minute, we're stopping the game for this like cutscene.
Oh yeah, they get deep into the story and everything, and you can switch. Each character had like 3 different martial arts styles, and one of them was a weapon. So you could, which I think they introduced in part 4, but it seems like they like got it down when they did Deadly Alliance, and. Then it's almost like its own trilogy where they continue that story and like Deception, where that had like a RPG style version of playing.
Oh, so you're building up your characters?
Yeah, where you're like a whole, you're a whole new character, and that's like the campaign, I guess you would call it.
Oh, God, interesting.
And you're playing him, and that leads into the bigger story, and then from there you get Armageddon or Apocalypse. Mm-hmm. And I remember that game being super exciting. So that may have been like 2006 at this point, I think. And they brought back all the characters because that was like the end. So every character that ever fucking showed up was in that game.
It's like a Smash game with the amount of characters.
Yeah. It was ever like this whole screen was just like the roster. And I remember that being awesome. Yeah. And then I think after that was when we got Mortal Kombat 9, which was the remake, I think, right?
Okay, yeah, I think so. I don't
even remember. Then there's Mortal Kombat 10, and I think the new one now is Mortal Kombat 11. I want to say
that's the one
which is called Mortal Kombat 1, And I can't wait to look. Like, I'm such a nerd for Mortal Kombat that the games that I haven't been able to play, because I don't have consoles. I go to YouTube and I watch the cutscenes because I'm into the story.
It's so interesting. Yeah,
totally. I'm just super into
I do that with video games all the time, man. Yeah,
dude. I just watch like, all right, an hour and a half of just fucking video game cutscenes while I'm
because also. Especially over the last 10 years, the cinematics are so amazing nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just as, they've spent just as much money as movies do. So like, the quality is quite high on those. So super interesting.
Love Mortal Kombat, man.
It's kind of wild to think. I'm hearing you describe all these video games, and I'm like, I'm not that surprised, because after 30 years, you gotta go some new places to keep it interesting and stuff like that. So
I never played it, but they even did Mortal Kombat versus DC. That was a game. Yeah.
There's a game on, is it Nintendo 64? Oh geez, it's Sub-Zero has his own.
Oh yeah,
is that Super Nintendo or is that N64?
It was N60. Oh,
or is that PlayStation? Shit, I don't know. If anybody knows in the chat, let us know.
It may have been N64, but I remember playing that. They had a couple different spin-off games.
It's pretty awful. It's really bad. But
I do remember the Sub-Zero one. Like, I remember we rented it. We never owned it, but we rented it a couple times.
I could.
Damn, that was the thing, man. I forget, like, renting video games.
Oh, that comes up all the time on the podcast because, games right now are still $60. When we were kids growing up, they were $60. Games have like almost forever been $60. And if you think about that, like in 1990, that's you got one video game for the year, maybe. I don't know, dude. I didn't have that money to afford that, so renting was absolutely a thing.
And it was like it was a treat to get a game like a birthday or something like that. I remember saving up lunch money and doing all kinds of shit, saving up money so I could get a Game Shark.
Oh, dude,
for Nintendo 64.
Yes,
the game where you put it in the cartridge goes on top of that.
Absolutely,
that shit was cool, man. GoldenEye with like infinite everything. But
they've re-released GoldenEye, by the way, on the Switch, so you can play it nowadays.
I wish I had consoles and time and I can do all that stuff. I want to play all these Mortal Kombats.
Sure.
I want to play the remaster of Halo Part 1.
Right, all the Halos.
The remaster of GoldenEye. Like that, man, there's an episode we should do right there. GoldenEye.
Oh my gosh.
Good
I love the movie, dude.
We need to do that.
Okay. I love the movie. I love the game. So if you want to do one, count me in.
Oh man. Yeah, that game, like I remember getting my brothers and I getting like Nintendo 64 for Christmas, and we had 2 games with it. I think one was probably some kind of racing game, maybe.
Probably.
And the other
Wave
one
Runner, some of them.
was maybe, yeah. And the other one was GoldenEye. And I remember us popping it in for the first time. The dam was the first level with the watchtowers, and you go up the dam. Oh, man, dude, that was good times.
We should absolutely do an episode on that because there's so many good things there. We could do
and that's just I think just as impactful as Mortal Kombat, man. Like GoldenEye, like the first person shooters. I feel like Counter-Strike and all the shit that came, like none of that is anything without GoldenEye. I think
we got to leave it there because there's so much to get into. Because how did GoldenEye become a thing? Like that's an interesting story. This would be fun. Maybe we do more of this because I really enjoy digging into the history of this stuff. Like digging back, it's interesting because thankfully Ed Boon is still with us and is still providing, like, still loves answering, appears to love answering questions about Mortal Kombat. Like he does interviews all the time about the game, and there are so many developers out there nowadays who say, oh man, this game influenced me to do this or just influenced me to do that. And so the fact that somebody who was there on the ground level, just being a dude in his 20s.
Is he still like part of it, running it? Because I think, I just learned this earlier, that Midway is gone, right? It went bankrupt or something. At some point,
but I think somebody bought the name or something. What is he doing now?
Because I think Mortal Kombat's like Warner Brothers now or something, isn't it?
Yes. Let's see. Video game programmer, Director Boone is employed at Midway since 2011. He has worked for Warner Brothers Interactive. Yeah, there you go. And Boone is known widely for the popular Mortal Kombat series, which created with John Tobias, and also did the Injustice series. So... yeah, I don't know if they kept the Midway name, but yeah, it's Warner Brothers now. So super interesting though. Definitely changed video games. I mean, there are a ton of games that have changed video games, but I feel like this game changed culture, and we see that in movies and in this. It had a Senate hearing. It affected like real people in some sort of way. So
Yeah, I was listening to one news clip and they were talking about like this is child abuse. Like anyone who has kids play, it's child abuse. Like, man, if you were alive today.
It's funny to look back on it because basically all of those people who felt one way about it were basically proven wrong. But I mean, this is something that still comes up today, by the way, which is fucking crazy, in my opinion, in this country, that we still talk about this when, there's still no conclusive evidence. In fact, there's some really good studies that say it has nothing to do with this. So,
yeah. Well, now just being at the point where with the internet, where kids can literally look up anything at all times. And even, being at school where there's all these blockers and they know all these kids turn into like professional hackers.
Oh my God. Yes.
Like all the shit I don't even know.
Any firewall is
about.
Just, it spurs
crazy.
a kid's creativity.
Yeah. It's like, man,
how to get around it. So,
yeah.
Well, Rudy, thanks so much for joining and chatting this. We're going to do this again because I love digging into this stuff, and there's so much around Mortal Kombat. A lot of people know a lot of the stories, but it's still interesting to dive in and how it affected us and how it's affected everything at large. If people want to find your podcast, find you, where would you send them? We talked about it earlier.
Yeah, at Drinks in a Movie Pod on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok now, where I'm doing little short form, more whiskey related videos. And the podcast is on Apple, Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Google, like anywhere you get your podcast pretty much. And there is a YouTube channel as well, Drinks in a Movie Pod, where my more like in-person interviews and stuff are on. So that's another place to check it out as well.
I want to give a couple. Rudy is an active cinematographer, and he's had many industry folks on the podcast. I've been on. I don't know why I deserve to be in any sort of room that all those and you guys are in, but I appreciate that I get to come keep guesting on the show. But there's also some really cool stuff. If you're interested at all in like cinema and how things are made and stuff like that too, it's almost unavoidable to get into how some of these things were made when we're talking about it. So it's a good time. So thanks so much for joining. Thanks so much for being here, everyone. If you're listening to this after the fact on YouTube or anything like that, thanks so much for listening and liking and subscribing and all that kind of fun stuff that people say at the beginning of videos and shit like that. So thanks so much for hanging out. Sequence Break Podcast. If you want to look back at all of the episodes we've done, the Street Fighter the movie commentary is actually on the feed way back. We did it a long time ago. It was years ago now.
Yeah.
But if you want to watch Street Fighter the movie and listen to a commentary track by myself, Rudy, and my brother, which it gets totally off the rails at times. It's a lot of fun. Please, I feel free. Rudy's on Drinks in a Movie podcast. I think it's still on the feed, right? The Mortal Kombat episode.
It should be.
Should be. If not, let us know. We'll get it up there somewhere. Hey, thank you so much, Ant, for throwing that
That's
into
dope. I appreciate that.
I really do appreciate it, Ant. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for hanging out and tuning in. I will see you in the next one. Have a good night, folks. See y'all later. Bye-bye. Adios. Take care.